What's up, all? How you doing today? Thanks for stopping into mobytrails.com. I was going to go out and work in the garden today, but it's freezing out, so I figured I would pressure can some meat. I learned how to do this from watching two videos. One was Never Buy Canned Meat Again by Alaska Prepper, and one was like the Beginner's Guide to the Presto Pressure Canner by TheMudbrooker. I highly recommend, for full effect, you watch both those videos. I'm going to distill it down to kind of the main points, and we'll get started. Alright, we've got our beef roast. It's chuck eye roast. I got two of them, and they're about 3 3/4 pounds, almost 4 pounds each. So for simple numbers, 3.5, 3.5, 7, it's almost 8 pounds. I find that you get about a pound per jar. Cutting board, sharp knife, let the knife do the work, very sharp knife. A couple of your canning supplies, jar grabber and funnel. We've already washed 8 regular mouth pint jars. Wash the lids, and then we've got our 23-quart Presto canner, pressure canner. You can't really see it, I know, but there's a little graduation mark on the back for 3 quarts. These take 3 quarts to do this meat. Alright, we're going to start out slicing our meat up. I find that if you cut it into kind of bite-sized chunks in the first place, it's just easier to eat then later. You don't need the knife to cut it into pieces. It's generally so tender when it comes out of the can, out of the jar, that you don't need a knife anyway. So I cut it into bite-sized chunks. Use a little bit of Mrs. Dash on it, or you can use, like a half teaspoon of salt. I find if you use both, it came out a little salty, so I'm going to try just the Mrs. Dash today. I don't really trim off any of the fat. If it's really bad, yeah, or if you get a gristly piece, you can tell that isn't going to be fun to eat, sure. Alright, once we've got it sufficiently cubed up, and I sprinkled a little bit of Mrs. Dash on it, now we start filling our jars. You're going to leave about an inch headspace from the bottom of the threads. Pack it down with your little plastic utensil. That's a little tiny low. Alrighty, that should be good. Then we put a cover on it. Check your covers, check your threads before I do that. Put some vinegar on it. And we got our 23 quart Presto pressure canner. I know you can't really see these, but there are hash marks on it. And there's one down here at the 3 quart mark. It takes 3 quarts. Make sure you've got your bottom tray in so your jars don't break. And then you put in 3 quarts of water. This Tropicana orange juice jug is 1.6. So 2 of these and you'll have just over 3 quarts of water. Alright, you've got 3 quarts of water in it now. Now we're going to put the meat in. Now it takes 8 pints. And if you put another tray in it, you can put 16 pints. We're probably going to get about 8 today because we have 7 or 8, because that's how we get about a pound of meat per. So we got our exactly 7 3/4 out of that 7 3/4 pounds of meat. So you get about a pound per pint. So now we're going to boil these up and go over the functions of this Presto pressure canner. Okay, this only goes on one way. It's got teeth, there's a little arrow on it. There's a little arrow here. Make sure your gauge is sound, all your connections are sound. This is your auto lock, so once you put your lid on, bring your heat up, this will pop up, you can't take the top off anymore. From that point, we're going to let it go about 10 minutes before we put our weight on it. So let's get this put together. Alright, so now we're just going to let it heat up and wait for this to lock. Alright, so our lock just kicked in. So you can't take the lid off this at all now. We're going to let this vent for about 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to put the weight on it and start bringing our pressure up. So we're just getting all the air blown out of here right now. Alright, we've let this run about 10 minutes. Our lock came up. We've vented everything out. Now we're going to drop our weight on it, and we're going to let the pressure start to build. Once we get to about 5 pounds pressure, we're going to turn the heat down just a little bit. Otherwise, from high to almost medium, more than a little bit, because you tend to overshoot your 11 pounds. I need 11 pounds pressure here. So we're going to turn the heat down when it gets to about 5, turn it down a little bit, and then when it gets up to around 8, 9, we'll start tweaking it down a little more, and then we want to hold it at 11. Once it gets at 11, that's when you set your timer for 90 minutes. Technically, I've heard in pints of meat you can do it in 70, or in pints you can do it for 70 minutes. I'm doing meat, so I'm going to do the full 90 minutes, and it seems to work fine. So we'll let this pressure up here a little bit. Doesn't take long to get to your initial 5 at all. But then you turn it down to about half. And then from 5 to 10, it takes another 10-15 minutes or so to start getting up around 10. So there it goes. It's almost a 5. I'm going to start to tweak this down just a little bit, heat-wise. Alrighty, we're at our 11 pounds pressure. So we're going to set the timer for 90 minutes. And it's from this point now, you run your 90 minutes for your batch. And we'll come back when this is all done. Watch your heat pretty close. We moved Once it got to about 5, we turned it down to about half. Once it gets up to around 8 or 9, you turn it down another little bit, a little quarter or so. Let it get up into your 11. Then you're going to want to keep kind of an eye on it, because as your heat meets through, as your meat heats through, it'll retain that heat and it'll start to get a little hotter. So about halfway through your batch, you'll notice the pressure might start going back up a little bit. So you want to keep a close eye on your heat and your pressure. So we'll come back in 90 minutes. Alright, here's the end of our 90 minutes. Kept it pretty much pegged at 11-12 pounds the whole time. You got some pretty low heat going on. Now this is what you do when it's done. Turn it off and walk away from it. You can't do anything until this little lock falls, so don't even try. You can't take the top off or anything. Leave the little jiggler on until the lock falls. It's going to take us 20 minutes, a half an hour. That lock will fall, you take off the jiggler, you can unscrew the top then, and we'll pull it out. So after your 90 minutes, turn your heat off and walk away. Alrighty, our lock dropped down. So now we can take off our jiggler, unscrew the lid. When you lift it, try to lift it away from you so you don't get a face full of steam. And I'm just going to let that sit for a few minutes and cool down even a little more. Alrighty, taking the lid off. Everything looks okay. I don't see anything exploded. Grab your little jar mover. There was the half full one that we did. And that's what they look like. So that was a dry pack. It's just all fluid from it's water from the meat. And then just let them cool. Wash out your pressure canner and store it back away, or start another batch or whatever. Let these cool. I usually let them sit overnight. So just one of them just tanked. This one's still boiling. So we're gonna let those go. Okay, this is what it looks like 24 hours later. Open one up. And then here's your meat, and it just falls apart. So it's just like doing a roast in the crock pot or whatever. And it just falls apart. Comes out awesome. Obviously edible right out of the jar. You can throw it in a, excuse me, I don't mean to chew with my mouth, talk with my mouth full here. This is just the grease that came from it. You can either just throw this all in the pan and warm it up. You know, or obviously if you want, you can, you know, kind of scoop out, sift out the fat or whatever, but the meat comes out just flaky, falls apart. You can eat it right out of the jar. All you got to do is warm it up then. Throw in some whatever. Gravy and potatoes and carrots. You got stew. Throw in some noodles and some cream sauce. You got stroganoff. But if you can find meat on sale, can it up. You get about a pint for £1. start canning your own meat. I highly recommend watching TheMudbrooker and the Alaska Prepper. Those guys had a lot more detail to their presentations. I just distilled the high points. But there you go. Canned meat, cut it up, throw it in your jars, pressure cook it for 90 minutes. Grow it, can it, store it while you can, man, I'm telling you. Thanks for stopping into MobyTrails.com. See ya.